What?
All right, I'm ready.
All
And
right.
our team is all present and accounted for.
Great. Perfect. All right. So good morning, everybody. One quick housekeeping note. Next week we'll be doing the orientation for the folks joining the T32 and those that have joined the TL1 in the recent time. So look forward to seeing everyone again next week. But really pleased to be able to have this morning Dr. Tanette Crossell-Wood from Tulane University. She's the Associate Dean and Associate Provost for Health Sciences, does work related to medication adherence and outcomes research. And as far as within the training program, she, along with Dr. Ken Sag, is the director of the TL1 program as well. But Dr. Crosswood is a fantastic person to work with, has a lot of expertise, and I'm glad that she's going to talk to us today about mentoring. So I'll hand the floor over to you.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, thank you all. It's wonderful to see at least the faces in this room on a Friday morning. I don't know what the weather's like at UAB, but we're going to be, at 107 with the heat index here in New Orleans today. So it's good to have air conditioning and good to see everybody. Ryan, thank you so much for asking me to talk to the group. Mentoring is a key component of what we do in developing this next generation of scientists, as well as academic leaders. And so I'm hoping that today, in sharing some of these activities about making the most of mentoring and how that really matters, will be a good addition to the program. You can see from just the cartoon on the first slide, when you're at various stages of your career, you almost feel like you've walked up to a crossroads and there are like 100 different options. And how do you choose the right path, or when is the right time to choose the right path? And so it's important to know what resources are available to you and to engage in effective mentoring with people who are role models for you to actually take the right path and be more effective, perhaps, and efficient in what you're doing. So how many of you know where the word mentor comes from? Anyone know? So if you all remember back in Roman or Greek mythology, whichever one you want, Ulysses or Odysseus, depending on which mythology group you hang with, when he was going off to fight the wars, he had to identify somebody who was going to help his wife raise his son. So his son was, just a baby at the time, and he was worried that if he's gone a couple of years, who was going to help him know what to do in the world of, whatever the world they were living in, how to be a man, how to effectively engage in society, and how was he going to grow and develop. So his trusted friend and advisor was mentor, and that's where we get the name. So mentor comes from this aspect or this thought that you would need somebody older, wiser. Of course, not that all mentors are gray-haired and men. I mean, they can be, of course, and should be women and culturally diverse as we identify people who are helping us. But the goal is you're identifying someone who's been down the pathway to which you aspire to, who can help provide guidance and direction in your development of your career or other aspects of your life. So mentoring is when we fast forward to today. When I went to a AAMC meeting several years ago, I really appreciated this quote. It said, mentoring is the assist and facilitate the realization of a dream. So as missions, as scholars, future scientists, future physician scientists, we have a dream that we're going to be able to develop or identify or reveal or explore something novel and innovative that's going to make a difference and improve human health. This is a dream, but you need this sort of guidance to assist and help facilitate the realization of that. So there's several factors that play into mentoring, and of course, these are really very obvious, right? So you would have the mentor, the individual who's going to provide this guidance, and then you have the mentee, which is most of you here in your training programs and our junior faculty. And then all of this happens within an environment where you're surrounded by a variety of resources. Some of them are going to be internal to your organization, And some of these resources and the environment that you're going to access are external to your current organization or even your future organization. So it's important that you look at these things and identify those the opportunities, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So if I were to ask you, one of the first things that you're going to have to do is to identify a good mentor. Now, all of you likely have identified ones as part of this program, right? And some of them were assigned to you, and others, you developed relationships with or you identified. This program is just the beginning of your interaction and identification and relationship with mentors, right? This is just the beginning. So as you go forward in your career, you will identify other individuals who will be working to assist you. In medicine and in science in particular, I find, though years ago, the thought was, people identified one mentor who stayed with them your entire life. That if you went outside of that relationship, that was not considered a positive thing. Probably more in the basic sciences than it has been in the clinical sciences. But more recently, people have identified that team mentoring, in other words, having more than one individual who helps guide you and provide the direction for the different aspects of your career, are going to be critically important, right? So you need to understand or be able to think for yourself on what are the characteristics of a good mentor. Who is it? What are you going to be looking for? So if I were to ask you all that, what are some of the characteristics that you may be looking for in identifying someone who's going to be your mentor? Okay.
Don't all speak at once. Some characteristic.
Communicates clear expectations.
Clear communications.
Okay, I'm hearing good communications. On this side, Tulane, they're saying you identify people who have the skills that you want to acquire, the people that you can learn from. Any others? Okay, so we'll just go through some of these. Certainly, one of the first things that you want to look at is that the individual is accomplished in the area to which you aspire to, right? That they can serve as a role model for you, that they hopefully have a track record in mentoring, that they've done this with other people, because, just because you're a good scientist does not mean you're going to be a good mentor. Just because that you're going to be a good leader or whatever, it doesn't take anything away from the characteristics they have as a scientist, but it doesn't always mean that they're going to be a good mentor. So having that track record is not a must, but it is a plus if individuals have that, and that they're professional individuals. In dealing with junior faculty as well as dealing with trainees over the number of years, sometimes people look and say, gosh, this person is a really good person, and I really respect them and admire them, but and they're interested in developing me, but if they don't have the skill set to actually help guide you, then it's not going to be an effective or efficient relationship. So students will come and say, I'm working with, Dr. So-and-so, and I want to write a couple of papers over the next, year with this individual. And then the question is, well, how many papers has Dr. So-and-so published? Oh, well, I don't know. And so you go back and you look and say, well, Dr. So-and-so has published 2 papers in the last 10 years. So what's the likelihood that they're going to be able to successfully mentor you to get 2 papers in the next 1 year if they haven't published more than 2 in the last 10 years? So, you really want to identify what you're looking for, understand that the person that you want to include on, or engage as a mentor actually has the skills and accomplishments in the area for which you seek to develop, okay? There are other aspects of a good mentor, and you normally find this out by talking with other people or your own interactions with the individual. And they are that the individual is respected in their field, that's good, but they're also going to be respectful in their interactions, that they are trusted in what they do and how they engage, but they're also trustworthy with respect to your sharing your needs and what you need as a mentee. Emotional intelligence and empathy pluses. Not everyone has it, but these are things that you would be looking for in helping you to engage. So with respect to this, and even when you're looking at the accomplishments of the individual, how do you think you find out about these things? How do you think you know these? Because you are looking for mentors. You may find them on the internet, or you may find them on a faculty list at your institution. How do you think you find good mentors? Past students, yep. You can talk to other students, other trainees, yes. Certainly meeting with them, that's going to be very important because there's more than just the facts, right? There's also the chemistry, if you will, right? Okay. How will you know if they're accomplished? Right. So on this side, you can do a literature search, you can check PubMed, you can check the internet. It's not always correct, but it has information. You can get access to a CD. You can talk to colleagues. Your other senior faculty and the individual may also recommend individuals. You all at this generation have a lot more information at your fingertips and via internet than certainly I did when I began my career many years ago. Really had to go by word of mouth. So do your homework, I guess is what I would say. Look to find out what they're publishing, understand what they do, and then talk with colleagues and other trainees about it. The last group of things that you're looking for in a good mentor, are they going to be accessible and available to you? So you've identified somebody who's very accomplished, right? You assume that they're very busy. They're already engaged in mentoring others. How much free time do you think these individuals have? They don't have a lot of free time. So there has to be a reason you want to invest in the training of other individuals. And they have to be willing to make that time available to you and to do it. So those are things that I mean with talking about. Good listener. There's some people who just, but you need people who are also active and good listeners, and individuals who also act responsibly. A lot of this outline, and they give great examples and stories, really come from this online American Heart Association mentoring handbook. They also have books you can purchase and that sort of thing. It's a really quick read, and I recommend that if you haven't already done so, take a look at that resource. They have others that have been provided on the website from UAB with the CCTS program, but it's a good opportunity to look at that and to see what's out there. Now, the roles of a good mentor. So if I were to ask you, what do you think the mentor is supposed to do for you? What are your thoughts about what they can help you with? What are their roles? To provide guidance, yes. Anybody from UAB?
Provide resources.
Provide resources, yes.
Provide networking.
Networking, that's a big key. That's absolutely correct. So there's several things that a good mentor would be doing. And you all mentioned some of this or alluded to them in some ways, but certainly you expect them to teach and advise. Important to know that advising is not the same as mentoring, okay? But you expect that may be part of it. They'll provide advice. You do want them to support you, and whether that's through resources, or sort of that the mental support. But there's another aspect that's very important, and that's the protector. And these are individuals who know when what things are perhaps worth your investment in time, and others that may be time distractors and time wasters, if you will. So what you're hoping is that by having this guidance from someone more senior who's been down the path, who's made the mistakes, right, of investing in things that were not worth their time versus, doing things that are, they can provide that guidance. One of the things that mentors can do, which is difficult for trainees and even junior faculty and others to do, is that they can sort of run interference for you. So you may want to do a number of different things, but they realize that these are things that probably won't advance your career, will take a lot of time, and ultimately will probably lead to frustration. But rather than you say, no, I'm not going to do this, your mentor can come in and say, listen, I know she really or he really wants to do this, but I'm not going to let her, or I'm not going to let him, because it's going to be something she's overcommitted, he's overcommitted, and there are other things that they have to get done right now. So it's something to remember, because you want to be, especially if you're good at what you do, people will find out about that very quickly, and they'll want to engage you more often in other activities. And you need to make sure that you are, appropriately allocating your time and your resources. On the other side, don't do a good job, that spreads fast too. So you want to be careful, in that regard. But the good mentors will provide that function for you, and you can ask them to help you, decide the things that you should invest in and at what time, and then also provide sort of that protection if there are things that you want to do or you feel that politically it would be challenging for you not to do, but they can help do that interface. So that's important. The other aspects of mentors that we as scientists really don't care for too much, but it's have a critic and someone who's going to challenge you. I mean, we're used to working very hard, we're used to accomplishing a lot, and often with little direction. But you really do need someone who's going to take the time and the effort to provide the critique, either to your papers or your abstracts, and that they're also going to challenge you to go beyond your comfort zone and to expand your horizon, to really develop in ways that are going to be helpful to you. And these aren't easy things to take. The story I like to tell is one of the first papers that I wrote, and I had a senior mentor who was, hundreds and hundreds of publications and internationally renowned, and sent in my paper, and he said, thank you very much. You've really done a nice job. I'm going to send you back some comments. Now, understand that when I was at this phase of my career, we didn't have track changes on Word documents, right? It was hard copy that arrived in a manila envelope with red ink. Same effect as the track changes in red, but it was a bloodbath. When I opened it, he was telling me it was a good idea. I was feeling kind of good about myself, when he saw me in the hallway. And when I got it, my God, there was more red ink on the paper than there was anything else. The initial reaction was, well, that was, harsh, and put it away for about a day and came back to it, and then realized how critically important it was that somebody as busy as this individual had taken the time, his precious time, to sit there and give me critiques on things that needed to be enhanced, sections that needed to be reduced, revised, or deleted. Tremendous opportunity there, and someone who'd taken the time to invest in me didn't really have a lot of extra time. So that was important, that you get that type of feedback, and you want to encourage your mentors to be, honest, constructively honest, but to be honest, provide that feedback, that critique on how you're doing, not only with your papers and your abstracts and your presentation skills, but also in how you're developing in your research skills. That's going to help you get better, right? Once as you learn more from your mistakes and you learn from your successes, it's so painfully true. It is so painfully true, but it's important. So encourage your mentors, if they're not, to provide that type of feedback. And then sort of grouping of the roles of a good mentor is this navigator. You all alluded to it. Someone who's going to help you navigate the waters. Someone who's going to help coordinate, and that includes getting resources, whether that's time resources, materials for your research, access to statisticians or research assistants who can help you develop your research, access to materials that may be available in the lab that would help you, articles that they've published, and then, of course, a good communicator to help you understand where you need to go, but also to help in coordinating the networking that you need, because they have a greatly expanded network compared to where you are. And just a call and email from one of these senior individuals can open doors that you could try months and years to access and they wouldn't open. So it's important to look at that and to see those roles of the mentor. Now, every time I talk about the mentor, and it's always easy to start with somebody else, right? What are others supposed to be helping me with and guiding? But then what really comes down to the meat of mentoring are what are the characteristics of a good mentee? What should you be doing for yourself? And what are the characteristics that you should have, that in order to be successful in developing? So now I'm going to open it up to you guys. Tell me what you think are good characteristics. Yes, being receptive to critiques, yes. Hardworking, following through on what the mentors are requesting of you, yes. UAB? Anyone from UAB?
Alan, you've never been this shy.
Enthusiastic, being enthusiastic, being bright-eyed and detail, self-awareness, and organized.
Self-aware, organized. I'm just repeating for this side. Self-aware, organized, enthusiastic, supportive, yes. All of these things. So again, yes? So the first grouping of characteristics I just want to go over with you all, and most of these make perfect sense. But first of all, self-aware, as someone mentioned, you really need to know and be honest with your strengths and limitations. And you can do this by doing sort of these self-efficacy surveys. We do this in our program where we ask you where you are on a scale of 1 to 5, or perhaps it's a red light, green light, yellow light type thing, asking you where you are with respect to different components of your research skills. This is tough for people to do. I've been a director of the Birch program for now, 7 years, and we're going into our next level as well. And I find it very difficult for scientists to really be honest. They're afraid to put bad numbers on their survey, right? But it's very important that you be honest with yourself and honest with your mentor on where you have strengths and weaknesses, because they can't help you if they don't know where those gaps really are. Being self-directed and self-aware, knowing where you're going and where you want to be in the next 2 years, next 5 years, next 10 years is very important. The individual development plan programs, we'll talk a little bit more about that, is one way to at least start to get that outline. Being focused and motivated, enthusiastic are also very important. If your concepts are all over the place, you're not really sure where you want to be, it's hard for anybody to direct you. If you're trying to be in 5 places at one time, it's hard for anyone to give you guidance on what your next step is, correct? So important to understand that, in going through.
So
the next step.
Yes? Just Matt from online also mentioned, which I thought was good, of taking initiative to engage the mentor even if they're busy. So really kind of building on what you're saying, driving the discussion.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the roles. But that is so key, that the mentees be engaged actively with that. Okay, so the next group, which you all alluded to, which is your response to your interactions with the mentors, correct? So you need to be open to constructive criticism, that you're going to be receptive to it, that you're willing to absorb it. I can't say it may not bother you. Sometimes it may hurt your feelings, but you really need to have thick skin. If you want to grow and develop, the thicker your skin gets and the sooner it does, the better off you're going to be in directing and filling the gaps and addressing your limitations and weaknesses in your research portfolio. It's also very important that you're willing to be flexible and innovative. As you all know, you've been involved in research already now for many of you for perhaps years, or you've just started on this pathway, but you're going to realize very quickly, if you haven't already, that sometimes you go down these pathways and the experiments don't work out, the mechanism is not correct, the question can't be answered, and then with the data that you have, and you've got to be willing to be flexible, to look at different approaches and innovative in the way that you want to do it. A little bit sometimes about, well, this will sound like a very odd thing because I know nothing about karate or any of the martial arts, okay? But there was a movie once that I watched where the senior person was mentoring a young individual and said, you need to look around you and realize that everything in your hand reach can be used to protect you or can be used to help you. And sometimes I think we're too narrow in our focus that we don't realize or don't look carefully around at the resources that are just right at our fingertips and figure a way to use these in an innovative way to help and build our career. It's there, One of my current grant idea did not come from a seminar, did not come from, talking with a colleague in the research world. It came from attending a leadership conference at Harvard and listening to them talk about how to develop future leaders, and from that identified a novel approach to addressing poor medication adherence in patients with hypertension. So again, take advantage of every opportunity that you're in and thinking creatively, being flexible and innovative in the way you want to utilize this information to advance your career. Now, of course, the things that you have to do, and you all mentioned several of these already, hardworking, loyal to your mentor, and in the process, dependable. So if you're going to be asked to do something or people are counting on you to do it, you need to deliver and you need to do it in a timely manner. And of course, always acting responsibly. As a mentee, as you engage in a very positive relationship with your mentor, they are going to share information. A lot of it might be confidential. If they're trying to advise you who to collaborate with, who to network with, or who not to collaborate with or network with, are things that are worth for immediate investment of time and things that you should delay or perhaps never do, they're going to share information with you. And you need to make sure you're holding that in confidence, correct? Just as you would hope if you were sharing information with the individual that you'd share that as well. You also want to remember that anything you do that relates to the mentor, it's not just shining back on you, it also reflects back on your mentor, and it also reflects back on your institution. So the things that you engage in, the way that you approach your research, you want to make sure that you're acting responsibly and thinking about the broader context of everything that you do. Okay, now the responsibilities of the mentee. Someone already did a jump start on that. They said making sure that you as the mentee follow up with the mentor and make sure that that you're staying on task. What are some of the other responsibilities? I'd love to hear from people online, UAB, as well as Tulane. Additional responsibilities that you have.
I keep an agenda, and I encourage my mentees to also keep an agenda for meetings with mentors.
I think that's excellent. To add on to that, I've heard people not only with an agenda, but they keep a log at the end of the meeting on the key things that were discussed with another, it's like a three-column log, if you will, that says what the agenda item was, what the key items were discussed, and the last column is action items. And that's very helpful. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great way. Others, what are responsibilities?
Complete your projects.
Did you say do your projects?
To complete them. I think task completion is important.
Ryan, can you repeat that? I couldn't hear.
Yeah, so completing projects, completing tasks, it actually fits with what Linda said online as well, of keeping an appointment, being on time, and doing the work that was agreed upon.
All correct. All things right on point. Yes, others?
So I value mentees who do not trust me blindly, who challenge everything I say, and do not accept what I am saying simply because I am older or more senior. So I like mentees with a little disrespected, but professional disrespect, where they're going to show me data, where they're going to have a discussion, and they're not going to sit there like lemmings.
I like that idea. In other words, I ought to add challenger to the list of mentee characteristics, right? That they'll challenge the paradigm, right? Challenge the relationship.
You always have to remember that Henry Ford said, if I would have listened to what people wanted me to build, I would have raised a faster horse. And I think your mentors get into ruts from what they've been doing for 20 or 30 years, and it's good to be challenged.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, yes. So from Tulane, they're saying that keep an open communication, tracking progress, making sure that that process is going forward. All very true. So if I were to group these things, just to keep this moving, if I were to group them, say there's certain things that you need to do just from a structural standpoint, just structural. You all have already just identified several of these. But first and foremost, the mentee needs to take responsibility for his or her career. I often start talks about this saying, asking my trainees, who is responsible for your career? And when I have a sort of delayed pause, I always worry about that because, of course, 100% responsibility for your career is yourself, right? So you want to make sure that that's why you're at the helm and you're getting additional support through your mentor. So take responsibility for your career. Make sure that you're setting realistic timelines and goals. And that's done in collaboration with your mentor, okay? And that IDP that we talked about, and we'll talk a little bit more about, helps start that conversation. But you know where you're going and then where you want to go. You need to prepare for your regular mentor meetings. That was alluded to already. Get an agenda, perhaps have a worksheet that you bring to the meeting. It has the agenda items, and again, as I mentioned, what the key things were discussed, and another column with what the action items are following that. Make sure that you're prepared. There's nothing more frustrating for a mentor-mentee meeting than to think you're going to be a follow-up on all the things that you identified at the last meeting and you realize nothing has been done. The mentor, your time isn't being well utilized, and that of the mentor is not being well utilized. And what happens in many of those situations, if you come unprepared too many times, how often do you think your mentor's calendar is going to stay open for these non-productive meetings? It's not going to happen for long, because as we already identified, they're busy individuals. But most importantly, it's your career that's going to be delayed by not being prepared and not moving forward so that you can build on your discussions and conversations and not just rehash prior assignments and prior activities. The timely follow-through on assigned task is very important. And I mean, we talk about follow-through. Follow-through is great, but a year and a half later isn't going to be very helpful. If we've said, well, we want a draft of the manuscript in the next 2 months, and someone comes back a year and a half later with the draft, the mentor's likely moving on and not going with that. So timely follow through, again, setting your realistic timelines for what you think is doable. If you can't make the timeline, give your mentor a heads up, give yourself a heads up. Why couldn't you meet it, and what are you going to do to address that barrier so that you can address whatever the task is. If it's not able to be done, be honest with yourself, be honest with your mentor, say, I can't get the information. I can't do it. Everything I've tried isn't working, but make sure that you've made that effort. So every task has a different timeline. Make sure it's realistic and appropriate, but set them and strive to meet them. And that will be helpful to you, and also not only for your career, but also for your mentor's time as well. The second group of responsibilities, yes? Comments? No?
Nope.
Okay, sorry, I repeat that. So the next set of responsibilities really deal with sort of the skills and things that you're going to need to get to the next level. And the first is, really working on developing your communication skills in writing scientifically, but also in communicating. And it's not just communicating in science world. You've got to also be able to communicate with other collaborators, community outreach. And so you take this opportunity as a trainee to develop those skills by participating and taking advantage of opportunities that come your way. Where you can, You want to delegate the tasks, where you can and where that's appropriate, but you also want to develop the networks, leveraging your mentors, a pool of colleagues to do that. Those things take effort though. So if you're able to, if you're, some of my students say, no, but I'm the one that they're delegating tasks to, so I'm the one being delegated to, and that's true, and it's an important role. When I first began in research, it was very important that I did my own data collection, my own data entry, my own literature review, ran my own analyses. I did a lot of this because I needed to learn it myself. I needed to understand what people were going through. I needed to walk a mile in the moccasin of the people who were going to be doing the work. And it has made me a more informed investigator, and I think a better mentor, because I've been down the path. I know the types of challenges. But where you can, for instance, get other individuals who are going to work with you on statistical analysis. If that isn't your task, you need to identify someone to do that. But also expand your network. Find out from your organization. I know that with the UAB Collaborative, as well as with what we're doing with LCATS, there are a lot of resources available from the NIH for biostatistical support, for community outreach, for community engagement, for pilot projects. There are a number of different things trainees can apply for and take advantage of that 20 years ago, frankly, were not available here in the Southeast. These new type of networks that we're doing through the CCTS are tremendous. Take advantage of them. They're there for you, and the hopes that we will be developing the next generation of scientific leaders. It's also important that you actively seek out opportunities for growth. Again, you're the one who really knows what your strengths and limitations are. If you've been honest with your mentor, they can help, but you also know probably more about your weaknesses than you would be willing to share. Just because that's not our nature to want to expose weaknesses, right? But you also know then what opportunities might be most helpful to you, and your mentor may not be aware of it. So as you think or you identify things, wow, there's a statistics course that I could really benefit from, bring this to your mentor. There's a seminar or a workshop that you want to attend, whatever. Identify these things, talk to your mentor about them so that they can help support you in these opportunities for growth.
So to that,
yes.
Real quick,
Yes.
so Justin typed in, not necessarily responsibility, but realizing that the mentor is giving time of him or herself. So taking initiative to complete tasks that may fall outside your purview as a mentee, but that can help them out, essentially viewing this as a partnership. So finding ways to add value. And I would just add again that it's a two-way partnership, that the mentee is not always taking and the mentor is not always taking as well.
Absolutely, and we're going to get into that in the next in the next couple of slides. Absolutely, he's right on target. Thank you for sending that in, because if it isn't a win-win, it doesn't work. Both groups have to. It has to be a win-win. And so, this timely, thoughtful, appropriate use of your mentor's time is very key. But again, taking responsibility and understanding what you need and helping give your mentor the right information. All perfect. Thank you. So the last set of, yes, does someone have something to add?
You're good.
Okay, so the last set of activities or responsibilities of the mentee, just in general that we can talk about, is this maintaining confidentiality. Like I said, both for the scientific type of activities that your mentor may share that may be confidential and not, unable to, but also on these personal and sort of political attributes. It's very important that you do that. You need to stay informed of what's advancing in the field, where the opportunities are, where the gaps are, and that's very important. And lastly, you do need to keep your mentors and other people informed of your progress and what you're achieving and what you're doing. Mentors are going to be very busy. They don't always know to the letter of the law what you're achieving and how you're progressing. Make sure people know. You can do that in a variety of ways. Certainly in your meetings, you can give them updates, but sort of periodic email updates or a quarterly report saying, just letting you know what I've achieved. An email update works very well for many, but I think you also have to understand how your mentor likes to communicate. Some are very tech savvy. They only want emails. Others prefer in-person meetings. So kind of understand your audience and work within that paradigm to provide this information and the updates. I personally like, even though I like in-person meetings, I do like email updates, either quarterly or every 6 months. Just what is the progress? What have you accomplished? I do it for myself, you know, at this stage of my career, and I think it's just a good tool. It also gives you feedback, and you say, wow, I actually got more done than I thought, or wow, this is underwhelming. I need to pick it up a notch. So this type of thing, keeping people informed, especially your mentors, is very important. It's hard for them to advocate for you if they don't understand what you're capable of and what you have achieved. So keep them informed. Okay, now tools for mentees, and I alluded to these a few minutes ago, and if you haven't already done this, and I think most of you as part of this program have, but understand it's not a one-time thing. Oh, I did my self-efficacy survey 5 years ago, I'm good to go. Or I've already developed an individual development plan 5 years ago, I'm good to go. You really need to reevaluate this. Honestly, depending on where you are in development, perhaps every 6 months, but at least once a year. You're going to look at where you stand on the key skills and activities that you need to have to develop your career. And so you can work with your mentor about perhaps tailoring it to specific skills you need, but there are general skills. And those are available in the self-efficacy surveys that I think we've made available to you all. As I mentioned earlier, I find in getting feedback from the trainees that people are not really good or can't be as honest as they should be with numbers. We just don't like to see bad numbers. I don't know, we're overachievers, I guess, something like that. But it's not good for our own development if we do that. So one thing I'm working on now is sort of this red light, yellow light, green light. You know, thing ready to go. You've got everything you need. You don't need any additional support for carrying forward your literature reviews. You know how to do those. Yellow is caution. You know, you've got some skill in this, but you don't really know how to do it. So you can do t-test or chi-square test, but when it comes to multivariate regression analysis, you're yellow. So statistical, you've got some skills, but not all. And then the red, areas that you know nothing about. And it might be something like community engagement or research. You've never done it, you have no clue how to do it, but you realize that the best answer to your question is to engage the community and to do this. So you may want to think about your assessment more in a stoplight type mode, because it's not as, I don't know, it just seems that it's not as intimidating. So it's one of those things that we're working on in our programs here at Tulane, and may be helpful for you to think about where you are and then where you need to go. And ultimately your goal, you want to be moving the yellows to greens and the reds to yellow. And they don't all have to be done overnight, right? You identify the ones that are most critical to your next step and move those to the next higher level, right? In an incremental step as need be, but just to make sure that you're moving. Again, important then that you reassess your self-efficacy 6 months, a year later, and are you moving that needle? Are you making that move? So, yes?
No, you're good.
Okay, sorry, I get some feedback. So the next component is this individual development plan, IDP, you hear them CDPs, career development plans, it doesn't matter, whatever you want to call them, but what you want to do is do it. And this is where you're going to focus on, you know, the skills that you need to enhance, okay? You identify those things, the gaps that you need to fill in this program. You also need to set your timeline for your scholarly products. I mean, the adage that publish or perish, that's been out, I don't know, it's probably when the dinosaurs roamed, I don't know, it's been forever, and it hasn't changed. I'm always surprised when I have people tell me, oh, publications are really that important? Yes, yes. Well, I can say, yes, it's always been that way. So if you're going to be a scientist, the way we judge our ability to be successful, to make an impact, to see if other people care about our work, to see if other people cite our work, they think it's important, is by the scholarly products that we produce. Through abstracts, scientific presentations, peer-reviewed publications, and also getting grants. If other people are willing to pay you to develop your idea and to answer a research question, that's a positive sign, right? These are all positive things. So at various stages of your career, you will have different expectations. As a student, you want to at least participate on a grant or help with a grant application. And as you get further along, you want to be writing the grant applications and ultimately securing them. But identify these on your IDP. What do you want to achieve? What's the appropriate timeline? Be honest with yourself, be realistic, and review this with your mentor. Timeline, product review, I cannot emphasize it enough. It's amazing how fast time passes. You'll see that those who just started this program in a year, it's going to go by so fast. So make sure that you do this. You may not meet every goal, you may not meet every timeline, but I will promise you this: if you don't do it, you will probably achieve. You will not achieve what you hope to achieve, even in the remotest possibility. So setting that goal, an appropriate target, is a good thing. Even if you don't reach it, it does help you move towards that target and make the progress.
So Tanette, this is Ryan. Can you also speak
Yes.
to, in both the papers and the presentations, as far as target journals, target conferences, and thinking both for how they set up their projects for that, but also as thinking as far as their career developments of where to publish and where to present and stuff?
Ryan, that's an excellent point. And this is something that, of course, the scholars will, early in their career, may not know the best place to go and where to go. But certainly, you want to work with your mentors to identify the meetings that are considered the best ones for your career development. So if you're in cardiovascular research, you need to be going to the American Heart Association meeting, right? That would be one on a national scale. There, ultimately, you want to have your presence at national meetings, but at certain points of your career, a regional meeting, local and regional meetings may be your first next step, but with the ultimate goal to get your research to a national meeting that has the area that's relevant to your topic. And not all meetings are the same. The journals are ranked. There are impact factors, and certainly we'd all love to publish in the New England Journal or JAMA, but that's not a reality for all of our research, right? Those are lofty goals. We certainly want to aspire to it. But you've got specialty journals, and they are ranked, and they have impact factors that let you know how much they are cited or referenced, if you will, by other investigators in the field. So impact factor isn't everything, okay? I'm not saying that it's everything, but it is a marker, and it is something you want to take into consideration. So if you have 50 journals that you can apply to, you may want to consider the ones, all things being equal, go with one a little higher impact factor, one that's in a specialty journal that's relevant to your area, and identify those. There are thousands of journals out there, millions probably, and the online process is really grown. I was sorry one time I came across a young student scholar who had been working sort of independently, and the guidance he had got was just get as many publications as possible, and was responding to every email that he had gotten about online publications. These were no-name journals that weren't going to be cited or done. So the CV looked good, but it had no meat to it, right? There's a lot of activity, but there was no meat or substance to the publications because they had gone this way. So you want to be deliberate and thoughtful, understand the society, the organizations, and the journals that are relevant to your discipline that you're developing. Work with your mentors to find the appropriate journal for your activity. If it's a cross-sectional study of 100 patients, you're not sending that to the New England Journal. That's not where that goes. There are other journals that may be appropriate for pilot studies, and so you want to work with them and do that. Ultimately, you want the best journal that's relevant, or for your work. You want the best one relevant for your work. And so you have to cast that net. Does that help, Ryan?
It does, and then I'll just be selfish and say, for those of you on training grants or any grant, make sure, even if it's your mentor's work and you're helping, if you are on a training grant, to make sure that they also acknowledge that training grant, because that just helps with the grants to continue to be funded, but also then shows that you were on a training grant as well. So that's for publications, but also at presentations, whether it's an oral or a poster, to further highlight that.
That's an excellent point. And there are a lot of things that go with that. One, you know, there was a lot of kickback in the political realm. Taxpayers were saying, paying for all this research, what are we getting for it? Being able to point to the amount of literature that has been published as a result of these training grants and other types of grants is very important, because it shows that we are contributing to generalizable knowledge by publishing in peer-reviewed journals. But it also puts a star by you when you're listed as part of an NIH-funded training grant. Reviewers like to see this. They want to support trainees that are working on this type of activity, and it certainly identifies you as someone who was successful in a competitive pool to get a training grant slot. So never underestimate what that means and what it reflects, and never underestimate our responsibility for appropriately crediting the source of the funds that is helping us develop our research. So it's very important. Thank you, Brian. That's great.
Hey, I wanted to mention that if you do a web search for something like list of predatory journals, you'll find a lot of great resources from a lot of institutions that sort of help you kind of choose which journals to avoid, which journals to focus on, and even sort of see them by specialty rank. And personally, what I always try to keep in my head, because rejection is part and parcel of what we do, is if you don't get rejected by 5 times with your paper, you probably didn't aim high enough. So I always sort of plan out 7. If I get to 7, I'm pretty sad. But usually, you know, realistically, not going to start with a New England Medicine. Depending on the study, make a realistic scaling of 5, and then just kind of put it in your head. If I don't get 5 rejections, I just didn't aim high enough. And if you get accepted anywhere 1 through 5, you feel really happy about that.
Right. I think that's an excellent point. Rejection is a good thing. It's hard to take, okay, but you're absolutely right. If you're getting accepted every time you send it out, you are not aiming high enough. That is true. Especially if they come back and have no edits. Your article is perfect. Please just submit and we'll publish it. That's always a sign that perhaps the review may not have been rigorous. I will tell you that from my own perspective as well, as painful as it is, every time I've gotten back a thorough review, again, initially it's like, oh, wow, but then very grateful, and every time the manuscript has gotten better. I always say that after I've submitted it and it's been accepted, of course, but it's always better. So the critique is important. Rejection is a good thing. It's our quality indicator when we're submitting things that where we're aiming and what we're doing. So excellent point. Okay, so as I talk about the self-efficacy and the IDP plan, I don't know if you all can see this cartoon, but you see there's this big hole that's been dug, and the guy's leaning over, yelling down to the group and says, "Stop digging, the plans were upside down." This is why these interim checks are important. You may be going down a pathway, and you just, you know, it may not, either it's not coming up, the methods are not aligning, the question can't be answered. You need to recalibrate and redirect so that you don't spend time digging a deeper hole that then you realize, you know, you may have been targeting down the wrong path. So your mentor and his mentor relationship can help with that. So we jump ahead a little bit about successful mentor-mentee relationships. Not jump ahead, it's just important to do it. And there's several things that do contribute to this. And people were talking about this already. This is a relationship. There are a number of things that play into why it works and why it doesn't work out. And you've talked about some of these. First of all, as mentioned, the mentee has got to make sure they're taking charge of their career and that they have self-reflection and understand where they are. And that's going to be very important. The mentor cannot, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And if the mentee is not, you know, really invested in their own career, motivated to make it happen, and really understanding their strengths and weaknesses, it will be hard for the mentor to engage in a way that's going to be productive and to guide you in ways that are going to be effective. As was alluded to already, both parties have to benefit for the relationship to last. That goes for any relationship with friends, spouses, partners. Mentor-mentee is no different. If both are not perceiving a benefit, whether in furthering science, advancing scholarly products, engaging in intellectual discussion, it won't grow, and it'll usually shrivel on the vine. So it's very important that relationship be reciprocal, and that it is dynamic, and that you understand it is subject to all the rules of relationships, right? Because it involves humans, it involves people. We have good days, we have bad days. We have successful experiments, we have things that go poorly. So it's very important. So this is a process, and mentor-mentee relationships are developed over time. And to understand that that's going to be important for these to be successful. Now, it's also important to understand that sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes the mentor-mentee, there isn't the chemistry, there isn't the opportunity to develop. And, sometimes people stay in those relationships too long. They think that, well, I'm going to turn this around. 2 or 3 years pass in their career, not able to develop because they don't have a good working relationship. So you need guidance, and if they're not working out, and sometimes it may be because of the mentor, sometimes it's because of the mentee. It could be your responsibility that you either like this area of research, but you don't, or you thought it was going to represent this one aspect to build your career, and it turned out that it really didn't, or the people that you're working for, just are not, don't have the characteristics you aspire to. So you need to be responsible for yourself, and you need to end it. And your mentor may feel the same way. And listen, your career is going in a direction that I don't have expertise. So I'm going to recommend, I'm always here for you for these methods, but I'm going to recommend that you expand your mentor network and add other people who have expertise in this other method, other dimension. So again, periodic reviews, understanding the gaps where you have and what you need, can help you know whether you need to expand your relationship, perhaps just move on in a different direction. So all very important. The last set of things on the successful mentor-mentee relationships is really to engage in active listening. As I'll mention in a minute, just talking does not mean you're really communicating. There's an illusion that people have that just because we met, we communicated, but we all know that you can have full discussions and never communicate with someone because you don't have that active listening and engagement. So it's very important that happen, as well as the attention to the work-life balance. As one of the other mentors in the room mentioned, you as a mentee, you are not just the workhorse and the pack mule for the mentor. It can't be that way. Not for it to be a relationship and for that to be a good building interaction. So there has to be a balance between the work that you're going to do when you want to further your career and you want to support the work of your mentor's lab or whatever, but you also have to make sure that you're balancing it with the other aspects that you do. Whether it's taking a Friday night game night with your friends, and that's not popular, where you need to have some time to get away from the science, because sometimes by having that opportunity to let you recharge and reinvest is going to be important, rather than staying at the grind zone 24/7. Anything else to add there from the other group?
I would just say the one big thing, again, just to highlight something you said, is to utilize someone like yourself, like Ken Sag, other leaderships if you're part of a program, to chime in and ask for guidance, and just make sure, if they're not, to do frequent check-ins and just say, hey, here's how things are going.
Absolutely. And again, take advantage of everything that's around you with this program in your institution. Call for help, if you need it, or guidance. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of staying engaged and being aware of where you are. And if things aren't going in the right direction, or you need assistance in either ending a mentor relationship or going in a different direction, seek the guidance from those around you, and this program can certainly provide that support as well as other contacts that you have. Great point, Brian.
One thing I wanted to mention a couple of things just to see. I really appreciate your perspective on these. So I've heard of sort of 3 distinct things that help in these relationships. The one I hear a lot from mentees is the desire for the mentor to care about you as a person. Not just really get to know you and sort of what you're about. And I think that has to do with the beginning of the relationship. Sometimes the relationship is sort of the mentor looks at what's on their desk and they say, man, I wish I really could offload this, you look like a likely victim. And that's sort of how the mentee gets their first assignment. As opposed to a relationship that starts with a conversation that says, hey, what do you want to accomplish in your career? What are your goals? What are you passionate and interested about? And let's sort of talk about those things. And even if we have to keep talking about them to refine them, but it starts with a focus on where the mentee wants to go, as opposed to how can you make my life easier from the mentor's perspective. So to me, that would be a huge red flag early on about that relationship. And the final point that I've sort of come to think about this is that there really are at least 3 stages. There's this first stage where the mentee needs to be guided. There's a next stage where the mentee is a collaborator. And then there's a third stage where the mentee is working towards independence and becoming a peer. And sometimes both mentors and mentees can be not aware of those times going, and it leads to a lot of frustration. Why do you still treat me like a child when I've done this and that, or, so I think you have to have this ongoing dialogue and really sort of track the evolution of that, because at some point, a successful relationship is one where you're someone down the hall who does the same type of work, and you're happy they're a collaborator. So anyway, those are some reflections on that.
No, those are absolutely on target. And you're right, there are times we're dealing with junior faculty that need to show independence. They need to publish separate from their mentors. And some mentors have a very hard time with that. And so oftentimes they'll call in other individuals, perhaps the Dean of Faculty Affairs or someone from the Provost Office that might help them navigate some of these waters, and talking in a respectful way to colleagues about, the fact they need to let them go. It's like letting your child go and become an adolescent and and do these types of things. So these are very important. So that trajectory over time is critical and needs to be reevaluated and reassessed. Great point. We have 10 minutes. Almost done. So the key ingredients, as we've alluded to a lot of this already, is certainly this mutual commitment. A mutual respect, trust, which is what we were talking about, that you care about each other as individuals and people, not just about the work, that their goals are shared between the mentor and the mentee, that we understand what they are, and that comes from the mentee really coming prepared to meetings and understanding where they want to be, what it is they want to do, with the understanding that you're also flexible and realize that, gee, you may have an unrealistic goal, or your question that you thought was so brilliant has already been answered, but you just didn't know, right? So this is, the shared goals are important. I always tell people you want to set high standards, but you need to have realistic expectations for the relationship, and that's you, mentor, as well as you, to have these high standards, but be realistic in how you're going to do them, have regular interactions, and set up the timing of that and the way you want to communicate with your mentor. The chemistry, which we alluded to several times today, is very important. There are people who are brilliant, wonderful scientists, great individuals, perfect in every way, but there may be no chemistry in developing this relationship. And it doesn't mean it's bad that the mentor or the mentee is something wrong, it's just not there. So if it's there, it's fantastic, and in many cases it can be. And if it isn't, then you need to adjust whether, can it develop, or is this just one of these relationships that's just, I need to move on. The environment is also very important because I mentioned in the beginning, it's not just 2 individuals, it happens within the context of an entire environment. The resources for either pilot grants, the type of things we're doing with the TL program, the access to research assistance, biostatistical support, that sort of thing. Also important to know, and I do tell all of my mentees and when I give lectures here, understanding the people who work for the mentor are part of your environment. That respect and respectfulness applies to everyone, including we have very few secretaries now, but anyone who coordinates calendars or who works that you think, they're peripheral to what the mentor who the mentor is and what the mentor does. No, they're actually very critical to every aspect of what the mentor does. And they are your connection and your liaison to getting access to the mentor. So those relationships are important. That same respect and trustworthiness that you would relay to your mentor also goes to everyone that you interface with them as part of that lab and as part of that relationship. And that's very important. News travels very fast from those individuals who have access. And that's not the only reason you do it. You do it because it's the right thing to do, and understand that everyone is part of that team. So things that you need to do: set up your regular meetings with your mentor, be prepared for them, actively participate in the research seminars, the meetings, the courses, the journal clubs, everything that's part of this TL1 program. You may not come out there with 10 new things out of every session, but if you leave every session with one new idea, one new thought for a collaborator, one new method that you want to explore in your research, I promise you it's a success. Don't think you have to come out with 10 new things. One is going to make it a success. Networking, collaborate, take advantage of these opportunities with this training program, utilize the mentors, the co-directors to do this, expanding that network. This is your time. Use it wisely. For your scholarly products, start early on looking at what you can do to develop abstracts to submit and present them at scientific meetings. Talk to your mentors about the appropriate venues. Prepare and submit articles for peer-reviewed publication. Assist with grant applications, and depending on what level you are, work on preparing them and ultimately implementing them. So get involved. Put that on your IDP, and continuously enhance your skills. Take your time. Whether it's an hour a week or whatever you do, that say, I'm going to focus on either looking at the literature, I'm going to look at research methods, I want to expand my grant writing skills, I need to, shore up on my human subjects protection. Continuously build your skills, and you probably have to hardwire time on your calendar to make sure that you do that. An hour a week, 2 hours a week, whatever you need to do that review and that check-in. The challenges that you're going to have to overcome, understand that no one is really trained, and they have courses now. Training is better in mentor and mentee than what it was in years past. However, a lot of people don't take advantage of it. So not everyone has a secret sauce. So don't expect them to be perfect. Like any relationship, you're going to have to work at it. We talked about the fact that talking is not the same as communication. Make sure you're doing active listening. Generational issues. Baby boomers, we function a little differently than the millennials, and how we like to get communication. Just discuss this with your mentors and understand how they like to communicate. Understand the mentor is not an advisor. They're often used interchangeably, but the roles are very different. And that ultimately, the mentee is accountable for their expectations, but the mentor needs to make sure that they are facilitating the mentee in achieving their goals. So ultimately, you can see the rocket of the mentee going to professional success by utilizing everything that's available to them in their grasp. And some you're going to have to do a reach, but you should take advantage of that. And ultimately, we're going to be measuring the success by focusing more on the short-term outcomes. It's often hard to measure commitment and inspiration, but what you can see are people satisfied with the program or satisfied with the relationship by staying actively engaged with it. Are there improvements in self-efficacy by interfacing with this mentoring relationship and advancing your skills? What are your scholarly products? And what is your career trajectory? Have you gone from a student scientist to a research assistant to a junior faculty member, and then advancing in your career along those lines? So these are the types of things that you're going to be aware of. And then finally, I wanted to share just a couple of, these are not scientific things on mentoring, but just some things. John Crosby shared that mentoring is a brain to pick, an ear to listen, and a push in the right direction. I hope it's a gentle push, but it is a push in the right direction. And all important, someone that you can access their knowledge, also someone to listen to you and provide feedback and then give you that. But I like this one from Steven Spielberg. The delicate balance of mentoring someone is not creating them in your own image, but giving them the opportunity opportunity to create themselves. And so at the end of the day, you're going to leverage your mentors, their expertise, their networks, but ultimately you're developing a new scientist, this next generation, by building on what they know, but tailoring it to your needs and developing in a way that's going to move our field of science forward and improve human health. Questions? I don't know that we have time for questions, or you have been very participative, so I appreciate it. Ryan, how would you like to go from here?
I think the one key thing to know is, again, as part of the TL1, it's a joint collaboration between UAB and Tulane, and really the entire partner network, and there are a handful of trainees that will be joining us weekly. So Zach Linane last year was on the TL1, and there's a handful of trainees this year from their MD PhD program that will be joining us and presenting, and we're working through different opportunities for all the trainees to get together. So this will be an ongoing thing, and Dr. Crossell-Wood, like I said, is an amazing person to work with. She's got a lot on her plate, but she always makes time for folks. And then my colleague down there, Rachel Rees, is another great resource as well. So this is not meant to be a one-off. It can be a thing of, if there's questions that you all have, we can always facilitate that.
Right.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to put a plug in for those who may be interested in coming to New Orleans in February. If it's appropriate for your research, the abstract deadline for the Southern Society for Clinical Investigation, it's a regional meeting, is in October. It's around October 5th or something like that. We'll be sending out those notices soon. And there are a lot of mentoring workshops, manuscript writing, and other opportunities for trainees to engage in. Abstracts are published. It gives you an opportunity to cite the grant. If this seems like something that would be relevant to your research and appropriate, we would just want to remind you here, and we'd be happy to get the scholars together for lunch or something while you all are here. We did that last year, and it was a lot of fun.
Real quick, on.
Well, I guess, how much time do we have?
We got about 3 minutes because we have set up for a 9:30 meeting.
Yeah, we're just going to talk about co-primary mentors. If you had two, how do you balance it? That might be two. So,
and we'll have other mentoring talks, so it's an excellent one and something to kind of, for all of us to think about of how you manage just a overall mentoring team.
Correct.
How do you manage that as you progress through your career, as you have different needs that come up, but also if you've got two primary mentors, how that works. So that might be a good other session to kind of think through as well. So, great. Absolutely. Well, thank you again.
Thank you. Y'all have a great day. Bye.